Your late 20s represent a period of feeling both too young and too late to start anything. A hobby, a creative project, a new pattern of behavior. At 27, you might feel both of the following statements at the same time. I am no longer good for my age at what I do, and I don't have enough experience to be good at what I do. It often feels like at any age we're not hitting certain set universal goals. But the reality is that these so called universal goals are based on encultured societal expectations and the learned desire to conform and produce. Luckily, these notions can be unlearned. Hi, my name is Bree, and welcome to Drawn to Story, a series in which I, a person with zero internet footprint, talk about stuff. In this episode, I'll be talking about the past year I spent writing and illustrating the first 12 episodes of my webcomic, Vestigial Tale, episode 1 of which will release on July 1st, 2025 on my website, bcstag.com. I aim to host it on other platforms as well, including Webtoons, Global Comics, and whatever else will take me. Creating this passion project has taught me a few things about the ways in which I define success for myself, and I'd love to share these with others. In the video, I'm drawing page 30 of Vestigial Tale, which I'll then color at a later date. Vestigial Tale is a fantasy webcomic inspired by indigenous resistance, the monsterification of powerful women, and my Filipino heritage. It answers the question, what if my dog were an elite imperial soldier who defected to the side of revolutionaries? And also, what if she were my mom? I've been working on this for about 1 year, which for some projects of similar scope isn't a lot of time. I've created other visual storytelling projects that didn't get half as far in their first year. But for some reason, Vestigial Tale was different. I'd like to talk about why I think I've traveled farther with this work than my others, and what that has to do with being in my late 20s. I always wanted to write, illustrate, and publish a graphic novel. That was kind of my thing. Though I have other ambitions, such as publishing a novel or novella with a publishing house, the graphic novel genre has the highest skill ceiling. Graphic novels as visual media require understanding of and competency with consistent character art, backgrounds, panel placement, and lettering. As for writing, this unique genre pushed my more traditionally text-based grasp of pacing, mood, and narrative delivery. Published graphic novels often have entire teams of people contributing to their creation. There's often a guy dedicated to just the lettering, which makes perfect sense because without evocative, appropriate, and most importantly, accessible lettering, you have an ineffective piece of media. For Vestigial Tale, it's just me and my Creative Commons assets. Huge shout out to Vigilante Typeface Corporation for making your super amazing typeface free to use. Beyond that, I have to make it and do everything myself. I find webcomics a bit more easy to achieve than the graphic novel, as these can be self-published periodically, while many graphic novel publishers require proposals to be pitched before the manuscript is even sketched, very unlike novel publishing, where you must have a finished manuscript in order to query a literary agent. Thus, my ambitions shifted genre slightly. Plus, webcomics can be printed as graphic novels at a later time anyway. I mentioned what it feels like being in my late 20s. To compare, here's what my early 20s felt like. I'm 22, I have my entire life ahead of me, I'm baby, and eventually someday I will just have the skills I need to pursue my dreams because that's what happens when time passes. And oh my god, it's 3 years later, I am ancient, I have not created my magnum opus, and I am not a published author, and I have not achieved success at this ripe old age of 25. No one cares about my art, and I still live at home and make below the poverty cutoff. I pay bills, taxes, and next year I have to find my own health insurance, and it's over. If that sounds dramatic, it's because it is. Now that I'm a wizened elder 2 years later, I see how my definitions of success were informed by expectations and falsehoods imposed by paradigm and capitalism. The idea that if we aren't productive in ways specifically defined by the cultures we live in, we aren't valuable. Anyways, I'm definitely cured of that logic now and don't have to spend hours each week reminding myself that life takes no predestined route. Sometime during my 25th and 26th year, it finally sunk in that 1, I was not baby and would never be again, 2, I'm still young and occasionally energetic, And 3, time would not deposit the skills I desire into my lap like some kind of talent entitlement. What helped me through this epiphany was surrounding myself with my friends whenever possible. I work in academia, and so do most of my people. Those that don't are either familiar with the channels of academia or are robust in some other creative capacity. I watch them just do things. One of my friends wanted to go back to school for an art degree, and they just did it. Another wanted to run a D&D campaign for the first time, been working on it for 5 years, and they did it. And I'm lucky enough to play in it. Make no mistake about their free time. In varying capacities, these people are overworked, underprivileged, and unsure about the future, and yet they create and pursue. Their work taught me to stop being afraid of failure, whatever that means, and start focusing on what I want to do within the means that I have. That's when Vestigial Tale started to take form. I had this super fun idea about a world that combined Western elements with Southeast Asian aesthetics, and that ended up not happening. Put a pin in that back burner. I have completed one drawing of a cowboy riding a dragon, and this transformed into Vestigial Tale, which is devoid of Western genre influence, but is noticeably Filipino in terms of setting and culture. I'd read advice about starting one's webcomic journey with a shorter, more manageable story, one through which you can learn and practice the idiosyncrasies of long-form comic making, and I sort of did that. I had a short one-page comic published in a magazine and then a few finished comic narratives submitted as final projects during my undergrad years. I also had at least 3 unfinished long-form comics from which I'd learned some things about comic formatting. Make no mistake though, when I started Vestigial Tale, I didn't even know how to divide the page into even frames using presets, nor did I know what size to make the canvas, nor did I know what typeface to use or how to create the crossbar's letter I, for the personal pronoun. You press shift when using typefaces that have that toggled. That one took me a while. For Vestigial Tale, I aimed to complete 1 page every week. When my time ran short, I aimed for 1 every 2 weeks and found that to be more manageable. A year later, I found myself fulfilled with 36 grayscale pages, each at 14 by 21 inches. Then I decided I just had to color it. I mean, it's a fantasy world with astounding flora and fauna. It really lends itself to full color. The only problem was that I really had no idea how to actually color comics, and I had no flow. For line art, I have a flow, an initial vector layer of contour lines, then several vector layers of detailed line work, then a raster layer for filling in spaces with black ink, every single panel, every single page, till the end of time. I had to develop that for Vestigial Tale, but didn't want to practice using my existing comic pages because I knew it would trap me into a cycle of not feeling good enough. I had to create other comics, practice my coloring skills, offer these to the world, then move on to the next comic and the next opportunity to practice. That's the way it worked for me. I started drawing short, silly comics based on the dinosaur video game Path of Titans, and then I accidentally created another webcomic out of those. Flying Colors is an ongoing story about 2 outcast albino pterosaurs who find each other. It's already available to read on my website, and I intend to talk about it more in depth within an upcoming video. Mind you, I hadn't drawn dinosaurs really at all before starting these comics. If you want to improve your drawing skills at a moderately fast pace, I recommend churning out as many dinosaur comics as you can. Now I'm obsessed with dinosaurs again, and let me tell you, I am getting brand new mileage out of my childhood dino print bedsheets. Anyways, what does creating a webcomic have to do with challenging conventional attitudes towards productivity? For me, Vestigial Tale was the act of letting go. The idea that I had to carve out time and energy away from my 2 jobs to create an entire world that would net me 0 wealth felt like a rebellion, if I may be so bold. The status quo was telling me and my people to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, but we had completely let out the laces. Making the webcomic and its website allowed me to see that creating is an act of resistance in a world that incentivizes the erosion of creativity. I know I'm largely sanding over the infinite factors that can cause a person to either create to their heart's content or fall short of their own expectations. Creativity and the lack of is a complicated topic. What I've found in my time of wrestling with the idea of life's, quote, important timestamps, like, for example, moving out at 18 in the United States, starting a family in your 20s, etc., is that the opposite is true. There's no promised goals for anyone. Peel away the layers of culture, demographics, finances, housing that inform one's definition of success, and ultimately you will find that not a single morning is ever a sure thing. That's why I stopped giving a crap about everything outside of what I needed to focus on, and one of the things I need to focus on is creating stories. The very idea that we're too poor and too tired and too young and too old to create is propaganda that benefits the work machine. Why should we wait until we deem ourselves enough of something to pursue our passions? What if that never comes? What if I accidentally wait too long, and the next day I turn 87 and I wish upon my candles that I just started a little earlier? Thank you so much for listening. I know I'm an anonymous internet user with zero ethos, but it feels nice to share the important things I feel that I'm learning. And I swear not all of my videos will be preaching about some niche thing that I find profound. Although please do understand that this is 70% of my personality. Let me know in the comments how you feel about your creative works and what the act of creating art means to you. Hope to catch you reading Vestigial Tale when its first episode drops on July 1st, 2025 on bcsat.com.